It happened in the middle of a bright Saturday afternoon, in front of dozens of smiling families at a neighborhood volunteer fair, when one harmless joke unexpectedly uncovered a secret that had been quietly living inside two hearts for years. What began as laughter froze into stunned silence, and before anyone understood what was happening, two lives that had been moving in completely different directions suddenly found themselves standing at the edge of a decision that neither of them had ever planned to face. Sometimes the words we speak without thinking become the very words that change everything forever. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can transform lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel. Every act of support helps our community continue sharing stories that remind us how powerful compassion can truly be. Graham Mercer had always been the kind of man who carried other people's burdens more easily than his own. At 36, he worked as a landscape architect in a quiet coastal town where every street seemed lined with maple trees and every familiar face came with a friendly greeting. His co-workers admired his patience, his neighbors trusted him with spare keys and emergency phone calls, and the children in the community adored him because he never hurried past a conversation. Yet behind the easy smile was a man who quietly believed that life had already passed him by. Years earlier he had spent nearly all of his savings helping his younger brother recover after a devastating accident. Then came caring for his aging father through a long illness that eventually ended with heartbreaking loss. Love had simply never fit into the spaces left behind by responsibility. Every Saturday morning, Graham volunteered at the Riverside Community Garden, a cheerful place where people of every age planted vegetables, repaired benches, painted flower boxes, and shared homemade lunches beneath colorful picnic umbrellas. It was there that he had first met Clara Whitmore almost 3 years before. Clara was unlike anyone Graham had ever known. She possessed a warmth that made strangers feel as though they had known her for years, yet she carried herself with a quiet sadness that only revealed itself during the rare moments when she believed no one was watching. She worked as an elementary school librarian, loved restoring old books, and had an extraordinary ability to remember every child's favorite story. She rarely spoke about herself, always choosing instead to ask thoughtful questions that made others feel valued. Their friendship developed slowly through countless Saturdays spent pulling weeds, painting fences, delivering fresh vegetables to elderly residents, and laughing over clumsy gardening mistakes. Friends around them noticed something long before either of them admitted it to themselves. They naturally reached for the same tools, finished each other's thoughts, and somehow managed to make ordinary afternoons feel memorable. Still, nothing ever happened. Graham believed Clara deserved someone with fewer emotional scars. Clara believed Graham saw her only as his closest friend. Neither realized they were making the exact same mistake. Unknown to almost everyone, Clara had endured heartbreak of her own. 5 years earlier she had been engaged to someone who walked away only weeks before their wedding after deciding he no longer wanted the future they had carefully planned together. The experience left her questioning her own worth. Although she rebuilt her life with remarkable grace, one painful fear remained hidden beneath her calm exterior. She believed that eventually everyone she loved would decide she wasn't enough. Time passed, and their friendship only deepened. They celebrated promotions together, comforted each other after difficult anniversaries, organized charity drives, and became the dependable pair everyone expected to see working side by side whenever the community needed help. On that unforgettable Saturday afternoon, the annual Volunteer Appreciation Festival filled the garden with music, children's laughter, and rows of blooming flowers glowing beneath the summer sunshine. Local families wandered through handmade craft booths while volunteers prepared lunches for hundreds of visitors. Clara had spent the entire morning helping children plant sunflower seeds. Dirt streaked her jeans, a loose strand of blonde hair kept falling across her forehead, and exhaustion mixed with happiness made her laugh more freely than usual. As they carried wooden crates toward the picnic area, one elderly volunteer smiled warmly at them. She remarked that after watching them together for years, she still couldn't understand why they had never married. Everyone nearby chuckled. Without thinking, Graham laughed and looked toward Clara. He casually joked that whoever married her would be the luckiest person alive. The laughter around them continued. Then Clara smiled softly, looked directly into his eyes, and quietly replied that she agreed. The laughter disappeared. Even the children nearby seemed strangely silent for a moment. Her answer wasn't proud. It wasn't teasing. It wasn't playful. It carried years of hope carefully hidden behind one gentle sentence. Graham felt his heartbeat stumble. For the first time in years, he realized the possibility he had spent so much energy convincing himself could never exist. Before he could respond, another volunteer called Clara away to help organize lunch tables. The afternoon continued, but everything had changed. Graham replayed those words over and over. I agree. Not because she believed she was perfect, but because somewhere inside those two words was the quiet belief that maybe she wished the lucky person could have been him. Meanwhile, Clara regretted saying anything at all. She convinced herself she had embarrassed both of them. She spent the next several hours avoiding being alone with him, smiling politely while silently wishing she could erase those words from existence. Neither understood the truth. Both were terrified. The following week became strangely awkward. Their conversations shortened. Their smiles became careful. Friends noticed the distance but assumed they were simply busy. Only Graham's longtime neighbor, an 80-year-old widow named Margaret Ellison, recognized what was really happening. Margaret had watched countless love stories unfold throughout her lifetime. She invited Graham over for tea one sunny afternoon and listened quietly as he finally admitted everything. He confessed that he had loved Clara for longer than he dared admit, but believed she deserved someone more adventurous, wealthier, and emotionally uncomplicated. Margaret smiled with gentle understanding. She reminded him that people rarely fall in love with perfect lives. They fall in love with honest hearts. She explained that Clara had spent years choosing to spend nearly every free Saturday beside him when she could have been anywhere else. Some people say, "I love you," with words. Others say it with time. Graham drove home unable to think about anything else. At nearly the same time, Clara visited her older sister, Evelyn, who had patiently listened to every uncertainty for years. When Clara confessed what had happened, Evelyn laughed through happy tears. She asked how many more obvious signs Graham needed before Clara stopped assuming rejection before giving him the chance to choose. For the first time, Clara admitted aloud that she had been afraid every single day of losing the friendship she treasured most. Evelyn gently reminded her that protecting herself from disappointment had also protected her from happiness. Days later, the community organized a daytime charity renovation for an aging senior center. Nearly every volunteer attended. Graham arrived early. So did Clara. The moment they saw each other, neither knew how to begin. Instead of forcing small talk, they worked quietly repainting long hallways flooded with warm afternoon sunlight. Hours passed. Eventually Graham placed his paintbrush down. He apologized. Not for the joke, but for hiding behind jokes whenever something truly mattered. He admitted he had spent years believing she deserved someone better. He confessed that every Saturday had become his favorite day simply because he knew she would be there. He admitted he had imagined countless futures but convinced himself none of them could ever become real. Clara listened with tears quietly filling her eyes. She confessed that after her broken engagement she had promised herself never to expect love again. She admitted she had mistaken his kindness for simple friendship because believing otherwise felt too dangerous. She explained that when he made that joke, she answered honestly before fear had time to stop her. Neither rushed forward. Neither made grand promises. Instead they stood in peaceful silence while sunlight streamed through freshly cleaned windows. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive with dramatic declarations. Sometimes it begins with two people finally telling each other the truth. Over the following months their relationship grew with the same steady patience that had built their friendship. There were no perfect moments. There were disagreements, misunderstandings, and difficult conversations. But every challenge strengthened something that had already survived years of quiet affection. They continued volunteering together, only now everyone noticed a different confidence between them. Children smiled when they arrived. Neighbors teased them affectionately. Margaret often watched from a nearby bench wearing the satisfied smile of someone who had seen hope rewarded. One bright spring afternoon nearly a year later, the community gathered once again in the same garden where everything had changed. The flower beds were overflowing with color. The trees were greener than ever. Families filled every pathway. Near the old wooden gazebo, Graham asked Clara to walk with him to the small bench where they had first shared lunch years earlier. He reminded her about the joke that had unexpectedly rewritten both of their lives. He admitted he had been right after all. Whoever married her really would be incredibly lucky. This time there was no awkward silence. Only joyful tears and grateful smiles as Clara embraced the man who had finally stopped doubting the love that had quietly surrounded him all along. Months later they celebrated a simple daytime wedding surrounded not by luxury but by the people whose lives they had spent years serving. The children from Clara's library carried baskets of wildflowers. Elderly neighbors who had once received vegetables from the community garden stood proudly in the front rows. Volunteers who had watched their story unfold applauded through happy tears. It felt less like the beginning of something new and more like two patient hearts finally arriving where they had belonged all along. Before we reach the end of this journey, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us whether you believe friendship can grow into lasting love, or share a moment when one honest sentence changed your life forever. Your story may inspire someone else who needs courage today. Graham and Clara eventually discovered that love is rarely found in dramatic coincidences or perfect timing. More often, it quietly grows through ordinary afternoons, shared responsibilities, gentle kindness, and the courage to finally speak the truth that fear has hidden for far too long. They learned that healing begins when we stop deciding for others what they deserve and allow them the freedom to choose us. The joke that once made everyone laugh became the memory that reminded them every anniversary that sometimes the smallest words carry the greatest miracles. They spent the rest of their lives continuing to serve their community together, proving that the strongest relationships are not built on perfection but on forgiveness, patience, trust, and unwavering hope. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Thank you for being part of our family and our community, where every story reminds us that kindness, second chances, and honest hearts still have the power to change lives forever.